So TJ Watt was recently hospitalized with a lung injury, and some are fearing he could now miss multiple games for reasons I'll get into in today's video after I talk about Philip Rivers looking to potentially be starting as soon as this Sunday after he was just signed to the practice squad. Then Joe Burrow had a pretty bizarre press conference that has some not only a bit concerned, but speculating on what could happen next. So I'll talk about all that, some injuries around the league, changes to this year's NFL draft, thank God, and more right after. All right, first up, Philip Rivers officially signed with the Colts practice squad on Tuesday evening, and he was at the facility yesterday, participating in practice and chatting with the media as well. And the big question that everybody really had was a couple of them in particular. Why is he back after 5 years away, and will he actually be playing? Well, Rivers shared that the team reached out after the injury to Daniel Jones, and they kind of kicked around the idea and set up a workout for Tuesday. Then later that evening, he signed, so it's all been moving pretty fast. Philip isn't dumb. He knows being 44 and coming back after 5 years off is not going to be easy, but he said the only way to find out whether or not he can still play or not is just by going out there and trying. Sure, on-air reps are a lot different than playing in a game, but he felt good doing that at least, and knows that the game plan will also likely be limited based on what he can and can't do anymore. But with all that being said, he feels good and thinks he can suit up on Sunday if that's what's asked of him. It also helps that he already knows the offense partially because Rivers and Shane Steichen were together in 2019 when Steichen was the OC for the Chargers, so that helps. But then Rivers reportedly ran the same offense this season when coaching for his son Gunner's high school team, with both he and Steichen speaking weekly about it, discussing plays and film. Now, it's worth noting that Leonard was a full participant in practice yesterday and today after dealing with a knee issue from last game when he stepped up to fill in for Danny Dimes after he tore his Achilles, so there is a chance he could be the starter on Sunday. However, Stephen Holder, a Colts reporter for ESPN, said that after 2 days of being around the building, combined with what he himself has been able to see at practice, it has him convinced that Philip Rivers will be this week's starting quarterback. Quote, "It isn't difficult to tell who a team is prepping to start. That player is Rivers, period." Well, okay then, pretty crazy. If it happens, I can't imagine Rivers finding a ton of success out there after just a few days back, especially given the fact that they are playing the Seahawks in Seattle. They allow the second fewest points per game, have the fourth most sacks, and are tied for the fifth most takeaways. But if Rivers does suit up, it's going to be entertaining, and I am definitely tuning in. Now, let's keep the quarterback news flowing here because Joe Burrow made some waves after a rather interesting, I guess you could call it, press conference yesterday. It was an introspective Burrow who was actually celebrating his 29th birthday. He was asked about his mindset and continuing to play this season despite coming off the toe injury and basically already being eliminated from the playoffs or very close to it. And this is what Burrow surprised some people with in his answer.
If I want to keep doing this, I have to have fun doing it. I've been through a lot, and if it's not fun, then what am I doing it for?
Well, you could argue he was just talking about this season and not having fun and all that. But just a few moments later, he said he's been reflecting on things that he's gone through in his career, and he's been through more than most, which is certainly true when you look at his injury history and all that he's had to go through. Burrow was asked if he's frustrated, and he kind of deflected by saying there's just a lot of things going on right now in both his life, football related and not. People are obviously now trying their best to read into this and wonder if he could be wanting out of Cincinnati. Offseason trade rumors will be going insane and kind of already are. Here's a graphic of somebody posting his top 5 landing spots already or best fits, or some are wondering if he's potentially or could be potentially considering early retirement like Andrew Luck. They're both the same age in the sense of Burrow's 29, and when Andrew Luck retired, he was 29. And Andrew was sacked 174 times in 86 games. Burrow, though, he's been sacked 203 times in 73 games. So that's 29 more sacks in 13 fewer games. Adam Schefter shared that nugget on his podcast, and that was a pretty crazy one. And I knew Burrow had been sacked a lot, but that is honestly insane. Honestly, it's hard to really know if there's anything to this, but at the very least, he looked tired, wore out, and is probably a bit frustrated. I don't blame him. He's dealing with another injury-riddled season. The team once again isn't great, and they are most likely missing the playoffs again for the 3rd year in a row. The vibe of his presser was at least odd enough that Schefter spoke on it today and said people are going to be monitoring that situation closely. Whatever happens next for Burrow, I hope he makes the decision that he truly wants, whether it is staying to play football, whether that's in Cincy, asking for a trade to go to a contender, or retiring. When healthy, he's a top quarterback in the league and a lot of fun to watch, so hopefully he is able to keep playing for years to come. And from here, I got to talk about a few other injuries, including one that surprisingly popped up today and is actually rather concerning. But first, I got to let you guys in on 3 of my favorite picks for Week 15 in these games. I'm, of course, using Underdog, the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports here, but Jared Goff, he's heading back to LA to play his former team in the Rams. They have a solid defense, but are middle of the pack against the pass, so going to take the higher on Goff's 239.5 passing yards because this is projected to be the highest scoring game of the week. Plus, Goff has hit that number 7 games in a row. Then, Jamar Chase's higher on 79.5 receiving yards is speaking to me out loud, literally. He's coming off of a down week, but he's gotten 22 targets in the 2 games that Burrow has been back. And now that they play the Ravens, who allow the 7th most passing yards, and Jamar just torched them for 110, I'm rolling with it. And finally, Devon Achane had a rib injury last week, but is going to play on Monday against the Steelers. And that's good news because Pittsburgh gives up over 125 yards on the ground per game, which is why I'm taking the higher on Achane's 64.5 rushing yards. A layup, considering he's gone higher than that in his last 8 games. I put a 50% profit boost on this, and if all 3 hit, it'll earn up to 3.3x on the money. And if you want to tail these picks, you can do so by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comment down below. And of course, you can make your own picks by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats for a chance to win up to 5,000x on your money. Just use my code CBTH because any new signup can play just $5 and get $75 in bonus entries plus a gimme pick in the lobby. All right, so it looks like Kenny Pickett is set to make his first start of the season with the Raiders. Geno Smith suffered a shoulder injury in their loss to the Broncos last week, and Pickett finished out the game actually playing pretty well, all things considered. Well, Ian Rappaport said yesterday that Geno's unlikely to play and Pickett is in line to start this week against the Eagles. Obviously, that's his former team. Well, it's not like this game matters for them at 2-11, and I know that record is bad because it is, but it's been way worse than the team could have imagined with all the moves they made in the offseason. Chip Kelly, for example, he was brought in and made the highest paid offensive coordinator in football, but was already fired a couple weeks ago. Geno's been much worse than expected, and they just traded for him and extended him back in March. Then Pete Carroll is a legendary coach in my eyes, yes, but the guy is 74 years old and might have lost his fastball. So I'm not sure how much patience they are going to have with him either. And once again, we could see the Raiders go into essentially a full rebuild in the offseason. That could include moving on from Geno Smith via a trade or just straight up releasing him, even if they would have to eat the dead money in order to do so. Moving on though, because all eyes are on TJ Watt today, who was hospitalized overnight after experiencing discomfort in his lung. The Steelers released a statement with that information, then said he will not be practicing today, and his status for Monday's game against the Dolphins is now in question. Adam Schefter reported that the lung issue initially occurred on Wednesday after receiving treatment at the team facility. That's all we really know at this point, but I've seen several people in the medical field voice concerns that it could be a situation similar to Tyrod Taylor back in 2020. He had his lung punctured during treatment while being given a pain injection to his ribs. This resulted in him needing to be hospitalized, and ultimately he didn't get cleared to play until a month later, and by that time, Justin Herbert already had the starting job. Obviously, that is just educated speculation. It's not confirmed. And I hope that is not the case because this could be more than just potentially missing out that game on Monday night, but multiple games, and Pittsburgh is still very much in the playoff picture. They are currently at the top of the AFC North, but not hanging on by much. Now, obviously, a player's health and well-being, that's always going to be more important than making it to a game and playing in a game of football, but Watt is what I would consider to be the heart of that defense, and it's only going to make matters much more difficult for the Steelers as a whole. They play Miami on Monday night, so you could probably win without him, but then it's the Lions, Browns, and finally the Ravens. All very important games as they try to fight for the division or at the very least a wild card spot in the very shaky AFC. Now, the Arizona Cardinals are on the opposite end of the spectrum. They've already been eliminated from the postseason with their 3-10 record. That's probably why they decided yesterday not to activate running back Trey Benson off of IR, which means his season is effectively over. Trey had been on injured reserve since October 1st after going down with a knee injury, which was a bummer because he was set to get a bulk of the work in the backfield following James Conner's season-ending ankle injury. But instead, he got hurt, and it's been a committee between Bam Knight, Imari DiMercado, and Michael Carter. Similar to the Raiders, though, I expect this team to look a lot different next year, starting with their quarterback and potentially even their head coach. But enough of the injury talk. We did get some positive news, at least for the Ravens, or their defensive tackle, Travis Jones specifically, because he just got paid. Baltimore signed him to a 3-year extension today worth $40.5 million with $25 million guaranteed. Travis was a third-round pick back in 2021 and has the 6th best run defense grade of any interior defensive lineman this season, according to PFF. He was going to be one of the most coveted free agents at his position, so the Ravens wisely locked him up before he could test the market in the spring. His play has been a major bright spot along the D-line, especially after they lost Nnamdi Madubuike for the season due to that neck injury. Some are speculating that Madubuike's career could be over, which may have influenced the Ravens' decision in paying Travis Jones. Next up, some changes are coming to the NFL draft, and trust me, it's a good thing. We found out yesterday that the NFL is shortening the time between picks in the first round. It used to be 10 minutes, now it's going to be 8, only 2 minutes shorter. It's not the biggest change in the world, but it is the first adjustment to the draft's first round timing since 2008. It could potentially save up to an hour on what is typically a very long night as it is. So that's a good thing, and I just hope somebody tells the Vikings so we don't get a repeat of the 2003 draft when a botched trade caused them not to get their pick in on time. They were at 7 and got skipped twice before picking at 9. Ultimately, it worked out. They drafted Kevin Williams, who went on to make 6 Pro Bowls and play 11 years for them, but still, it's one of the most embarrassing draft stories in NFL history, so let's just make sure we don't repeat that with this new time adjustment. Anyway, with all that being said, what do you guys think about this injury to TJ Watt, and what is your concern level there? Then, what about Joe Burrow's interesting press conference and the potential of Philip Rivers starting as soon or as early as this Sunday? Let me know either way in the comments down below, and with that, I'll see y'all next time.